Friends, today we are going to talk about the story of a handsome boy and a beautiful vampire, how this mesmerizing vampire traps the boy in her web and uses him to fulfill her desires. The movie begins with a young man named Cameron, who is spending intimate moments in a bedroom with a stunning girl named Diane. Just as things start heating up, Cameron suddenly wakes up. It was nothing but a beautiful dream. Feeling a bit disappointed, he sighs. Cameron is a student who secretly has a crush on Diane, a girl from his college. That's why he often imagines her in his dreams. After waking up, he joins his family for breakfast. His family consists of only his parents, who are quite serious about his future. His father advises him to focus on his career, especially now that the college holidays have begun. After getting scolded by his father, Cameron gets ready and heads to the ice cream parlor where he works. However, he arrives quite late and, as expected, gets a scolding from his boss. The scene then shifts to a gorgeous young woman named Victoria, who has just moved in near Cameron's house. Meanwhile, Cameron's boss assigns him extra work for being late, but he refuses, making an excuse that he has a date with Diane. With that, he leaves the store and heads towards Diane's house. However, the truth is that Cameron made up the date to avoid extra work. He secretly watches Diane as she enjoys the sun in her revealing outfit. Seeing her like this, Cameron's desires awaken, and he starts clicking her pictures. Just then, two guys, his college mates, show up and stop him. They grab his phone and throw it away before getting into a fight with him. Hearing the commotion, Diane comes outside and asks what's happening. The guys tell her that Cameron was secretly taking her pictures. Hearing this, Diane gets upset. To prove his innocence, Cameron offers to show his phone, but just as he goes to pick it up, a passing car runs over it, smashing it to pieces. Heartbroken, Cameron picks up his broken phone and returns home. Later, as he sits in his room, he notices Victoria changing her clothes through her window. Unable to resist, he watches her, but the moment Victoria looks in his direction, he quickly hides. Feeling nervous, he heads downstairs to have dinner with his family. Suddenly, the doorbell rings. Cameron hesitates, fearing that Victoria might have come to complain about him spying on her. Gathering his courage, he cautiously opens the door, only to find Diane standing there instead. Diane asks Cameron to hang out, and he immediately agrees. They go to a pizza restaurant, where Diane treats Cameron just as a friend. While they're there, Cameron's friend Martin also arrives, which Diane doesn't seem to like. When Cameron calls Martin over, we notice that Martin also doesn't look too pleased to see Diane. Cameron picks up on this and asks Diane why. She explains that she and Martin used to be in a relationship, but things didn't work out, so they broke up. Hearing this, Cameron feels bad. He doesn't like the idea of his crush, Diane, having a past with someone else. As they continue talking, Cameron notices Victoria standing in the background, staring at him in an unsettling way. This makes him feel very uncomfortable, so he rushes back to his room. When he pulls back the curtain and looks toward Victoria's house, he sees that she is still staring right at him. Suddenly, Victoria disappears from the window and appears right behind him. Cameron is shocked. Victoria accuses him of spying on her. Feeling guilty, Cameron quickly apologizes, but Victoria refuses to forgive him. Instead, she gives him a condition. He must go somewhere with her. Cameron doesn't want to go, but when Victoria threatens to complain to his parents, he has no choice but to agree. She takes him to an old building and keeps his car keys with her before heading inside with another man. A long time passes, but Victoria doesn't come back out. Growing impatient, Cameron decides to check inside. Just as he takes a step forward, the man who had gone in with Victoria stumbles out of the building, wounded and asking for help. Terrified, Cameron panics and rushes back to his car. Just then, Victoria also steps out, her face covered in blood. Right in front of Cameron, she drinks the man's blood, killing him instantly. Witnessing this horrifying scene, Cameron is left in shock. However, Victoria doesn't harm him. Instead, they both get into the car and head home. On the way, Cameron realizes the terrifying truth. Victoria is actually a vampire. After revealing her secret, Victoria invites him to her place and tells him about her plan for the next night. Cameron doesn't want to get involved, but after witnessing her true form, he is too scared to refuse. Since he had helped her tonight, Victoria gets close to him, kisses him, and then leaves. The next morning, Cameron's father notices blood on the car and questions him about it. Cameron is at a loss for words, but before he can say anything, Victoria arrives. She quickly fabricates a lie, saying that a wounded deer had crossed their path last night and the blood belongs to it. She speaks so convincingly that even Cameron's father believes her. During their conversation, Victoria tells Cameron's father that she works at night and asks if she can borrow a car. She also requests that Cameron accompany her as a helper. Without hesitation, his father agrees. Later that day, Cameron heads to the ice cream parlor for work. Soon, Martin arrives as well. Martin wants to get back together with Diane, so he gives Cameron some tips on how to sort things out between them. He also shares that on their first date, he was so nervous that he couldn't even show up, which eventually ruined their relationship. Unaware that Cameron also has feelings for Diane, Martin continues to talk about his plans. Cameron, wanting to support his friend's happiness, decides to speak to Diane and tries to make Martin seem like a good guy in her eyes. As night falls, Victoria shows up at Cameron's place again and takes him along with her. Just like the previous time, She enters a building alone while Cameron waits in the car. After a while, a dead body suddenly falls onto the car, smearing it with blood. Moments later, Victoria returns and casually licks the blood off her hands before getting into the car. Before heading home, Cameron cleans the blood off the car and then drops Victoria off. Later, when he is back in his room, Victoria suddenly appears there. She finally reveals the truth. She is a vampire and has been alive for 247 years. She confesses that she is on a mission to avenge her lover's death, and the people she has been hunting down are all connected to his murder. Cameron learns that Victoria's targets were all vampires responsible for her lover's death. Knowing this, he starts feeling sympathy for her. The next morning, Martin visits Cameron's house again, insisting that he help him patch things up with Diane. That night, Victoria once again takes Cameron along with her. However, this time, he appears much more comfortable around her. Curious, he asks, "How many more people do you have to eliminate?" Victoria reveals that only 2 more remain, and the last one is the vampire who killed her lover. As they reach their destination, Victoria, as always, asks Cameron to wait in the car before she heads inside. But this time, Cameron doesn't listen. He follows her into the building. Seeing this, Victoria gets a little annoyed, but after Cameron convinces her, she lets it slide. The two then move forward together. Inside, Victoria's next target is a security guard who immediately starts firing bullets at them. However, without hesitation, Victoria overpowers him and drains his blood, finishing him off. She then turns back to Cameron, only to find him lying unconscious on the ground. Panic rushes over Victoria as she assumes he's been shot. She rushes to his side, genuinely worried. But just then, Cameron opens his eyes and starts laughing. It was all an act. Realizing she was tricked, Victoria gets furious. She warns him never to pull a stunt like that again. Before heading home, Cameron asks Victoria for the next day off, as he plans to set up a date for Diane and Martin. Victoria, though reluctant, agrees. The following day, while working at the ice cream parlor, Cameron's co-worker, Liz, invites him to an event that evening. However, Cameron declines. Liz is visibly upset, as she secretly has feelings for him, but Cameron remains completely unaware. Later that night, Cameron, Martin, and Diane go on a planned date. Thanks to Cameron's efforts, Diane and Martin start reconnecting. Seeing this, Cameron quietly leaves them alone. As he steps outside, he unexpectedly runs into Victoria. Feeling overwhelmed, he finally opens up to her and confesses, "I like Diane." Hearing this, Victoria is utterly shocked, but before she can react, a group of guys appears. It's the same ones who had once bullied Cameron. Realizing this is his chance, Cameron stands up to them, determined to get his revenge. And this time, Victoria stands by his side, fully supporting him. She issues a final warning to the bullies, ensuring they never dare mess with Cameron again. Victoria warns the bullies never to think about harming Cameron again. Due to the fight, Cameron's hand starts hurting badly. Seeing this, Victoria gives him a special liquid to drink. The moment he takes it, he feels a sudden surge of energy and starts dancing with excitement. Later that night, Victoria sneaks into Cameron's room and tries to get close to him. Just then, his father walks in. Seeing them together, he awkwardly apologizes and leaves. However, Cameron, still in love with Diane, refuses to get close to Victoria. The next morning, Martin shows up with bad news. He and Diane have fought again. Hearing this, Cameron feels a slight sense of satisfaction. He bids Martin goodbye and leaves. Meanwhile, while shopping, Diane and Victoria run into each other and have a brief conversation. On the other hand, Cameron is worried about Diane and Martin's situation. To lift his mood, Liz invites him to go out that night, and this time, he agrees. That night, as Cameron is on his way to meet Liz, he spots Diane's car parked outside Victoria's house. Curious, he peeks inside and is shocked to see Diane and Victoria together, incredibly close. Forgetting all about Liz, he stands frozen in disbelief. Meanwhile, Liz waits for Cameron for a long time, but he never shows up. The next morning, Diane leaves Victoria's house. Furious, Cameron confronts Victoria and demands that she stay away from Diane. However, Victoria refuses to listen. Sensing that Diane's life might be in danger, Cameron decides to seek Martin's help. To bring Diane and Martin back together, Cameron plans another date for them. However, the night takes a horrifying turn. Diane takes Martin into the woods and starts drinking his blood, ultimately killing him. That's when the shocking truth is revealed. Diane is also a vampire. Diane then places Martin's lifeless body in the car and drives to Cameron. She confesses her secret to him, saying, "I am a vampire. That's why we can never be together." Later that night, Victoria comes to Cameron, asking for his help one last time. But this time, Cameron puts a knife to her throat, threatening her. However, in the end, he agrees to help. Shortly after, Diane and Victoria finally come face to face, and a fierce battle erupts between the two vampires. In the middle of their fight, Diane suddenly reveals something shocking. She wasn't the one who killed Victoria's partner. In fact, she was the one who tried to save him at the last moment. Hearing this, both vampires stop fighting. Instead of continuing their feud, they decide to stick together and leave the human world behind. Before departing, Diane shares a final, heartfelt moment with Cameron. Then, both vampires vanish into the night, far away from humans. And with that, the story comes to an end. Friends, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update.